breath, and he used that breath here in Greenville, and he used that breath worldwide. Continuing our breaking news coverage now, honoring the life of the late Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. I'm joined now by Greenville City Councilman Ken Gibson. Ken is a Greenville native, and Ken, you grew up here, but then you went to West Point. You served in the U.S. Army, a terrific law career, and then you came home to Greenville. Your parents were both civil rights activists. Your mom, Lottie Gibson, serving on Greenville City Council before you. Let's talk about the Reverend Jackson and Greenville. What are your fondest memories of him? Are you old enough to remember him?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of knowing Reverend Jackson my entire life. And if you ask me what my fondest memories are of him, it's quite frankly of him coming back to Greenville and visiting his mom. Oh. He was a tremendous family man. He loved his mother to the nth degree. He would come home often to see her. It was clear that he cared about her. Often his sons and his daughters would come, and just the whole family dynamic of them was really my fondest memory of him.
And what a wonderful example to the kids of Greenville. I mean, she lived on Haney Street. The house is still right there. And I would say, too, one of my fondest memories that when I was in radio and 23 years old, we always knew that he was going to come and talk to the media on Mother's Day when he came to see his mom. How did his life and his work, I'm sure your parents were both civil rights activists. They worked together. How did that impress you as a young man? Is that what led you into law?
Yeah, I guess to a big extent it did. The seeking of justice, the seeking of equality, that whole thing as far as leading me into law and wanting to be a lawyer. As far as Reverend Jackson is concerned, I mean, there were a number of things about him. I mean, he did a great deal of work in Greenville well before I was born. Back when he was just a freshman in college, he was part of the Greenville 8, which desegregated the library. He would often come back. He would work with Dr. King. He was a national figure. So whenever he came through, you know, people were excited and inspired by him. If you ask me, I guess what I think is his greatest accomplishment, I think it would be his ability to inspire people to be able to do things that they did not think were otherwise possible. He had a call and response that he would do with kids with, I am somebody. I am somebody.
A child of God.
Exactly. and it had this effect where it like inspired you to say, okay, I'm more than where I come from. I'm more than what people tell me that I am. I am capable of doing whatever I want to do. And that didn't just happen with kids. I mean, quite frankly, I don't think there would have been a Barack Obama had there not been a Reverend Jackson and his run in '84 and '88.
Because?
Because he made it seem like it was possible. Yeah. And I guess if you really look at the greatest obstacle to a goal or a dream, is that feeling that it is impossible. But once you break through that barrier, then it becomes something that can be accomplished and the like. And I just don't think that had he not run in '88 and had the success that he had, winning actual primaries, being a leading contender in the Democratic National Convention, the speech that he gave at the Democratic National Convention, I can't help but think that inspired Barack Obama to believe that, hey, if I run, I could actually win.
And it certainly did, Ken, invigorate minorities to understand that their vote mattered.
Absolutely. I mean, he was a big proponent of voter registration drives, of people building coalitions, of people exercising the power that they have. And a lot of people don't think they have power, but they do. And if everyone has a vote that they can use, and everyone has the ability to join with others and coalesce their forces in a way where it actually impacts and makes change.
I will vote. My vote counts.
Absolutely.
Yet another one we learned from that. Ken Gibson, thank you. Thank you so much for your service to Greenville, and thank you for your time with us today in these reflections.
Thank you.